Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Chung.
And my name's Tiffany Tran.
And we are the CPP Selection Co-Directors for 2017-2018. Thank you for joining us on the CPP webinar tonight.
Our goal is to broaden our reach to domestic and international nonprofit organizations that are doing amazing work serving the API community and to give UNAVSA members some more background about the Collective Philanthropy Project. Topics that will be discussed during the webinar tonight are as follows: Introduction to UNAVSA, the history and impact of CPP, our 3 branches of CPP, our selection process, and an FAQ portion at the end.
At any time, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to type them into the side chat bar, and we will address them during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar.
I'll now turn it over to our internal Vice President, Jen Ye, to give more background on the history of UNASA and CPP.
We apologize for the technical difficulties going on. It appears that Jen read off her slides, but no one could hear her, so I'm going to go ahead and reread them. So first, we'd like to take a step back and introduce some more background on UNAVSA, which stands for the Union of North American Vietnamese Student Associations. In 2004, student leaders from Southern California and Boston formed UNAVSA as a means to connect Vietnamese youth across the US and Canada. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan, and community-based organization. And our mission is to empower Vietnamese youth and the intent of advocating for the progress of North American Vietnamese community.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Sorry about that. I think I'm back online now. But thank you for recapping that for me. The Collective Philanthropy Project, also known as CPP, was created in 2005 as a vehicle to assist nonprofit organizations or philanthropy groups to better achieve their mission through collective and collaborative partnership with UNAVSA and its constituents. CPP provides a medium for students and young professionals across North America to collaborate behind one charitable cause each year through advocacy and funding. This is a great platform for all nonprofit organizations to raise awareness for their cause and their initiatives. To give you an idea of CPP's impact, our community has fundraised over $500,000 towards various nonprofit organizations since this initiative started. It's all thanks to the hard work of our constituents that any of this has been possible. I will now pass it back to Kim.
Listed on the slide are our 3 CPP committees: selection, campaign, and audit. They go hand in hand with our process, beginning with selection in the application process, campaign in spreading awareness and fundraising by our constituents, and finally, audit in the allocation of the funded amount. We have invited the directors from CPP Audit and Campaign tonight. In a bit, we'll have them introduce themselves and go more in depth on their role in the CPP process.
We would like to give a quick introduction to the 2017-2018 CPP staff. We are excited to have CPP Audit Director Sarah Vuong and CPP Campaign Director Dan Quack and the rest of the CPP selection team and other members of the CPP staff to go over the CPP process.
From the time of your application is submitted until the completion of your project, our timeline spans over about 4 years and 3 different committees. Now we are going to go through each step of the process, starting with selection.
As organizations apply to become a CPP beneficiary, with the support from CPP Selection, we act as the liaison between your organization and UNAVSA to facilitate the preliminary voting of the top 3 finalists and lead the selection session at the annual leadership conference to determine the next CPP beneficiary. I'll now pass it off to Dan to talk about the campaign process.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan, and I'm the CPP Campaign Director. After the selection process, the beneficiary then works alongside the CPP campaign team, campaign committee to raise awareness of their mission and project and help drive fundraising efforts across VSAs in North America. The campaign team is in charge of the branding, marketing, and awareness building of the current beneficiary. This year, it happens to be the Pacific Links Foundation. They're involved in the entire planning process and is in charge of the total money raised for this year's CPP. If you have any further questions regarding CPP campaign, please feel free to ask in the live chat and I will answer them during the Q&A portion. Now I'll send it over to Sarah from CPP Audit.
Thanks, Dan. For the audit process, we break down the amount raised into what we call waves. The amount of waves depend on the beneficiary's project timeline. After the beneficiary uses the funds from a wave, they provide us with receipts and documentations proving they spent the amount that was released in accordance with their project proposal. Our team reviews and reconciles all the documentation and then creates a report that is released to our constituents. We then release the next wave of funds and repeat the same process until all the funds have been released and audited. Currently, CPP Audit is working on auditing 2 organizations, Kids Without Borders and Catalyst Foundation. Now I will hand it back to Kim.
Thank you so much to our audit and campaign directors, Sarah and Dan. Now we're going to talk more about our selection process for this year. For those of you who have applied before, you will notice that there are a few small changes. First, I'm going to hand it off to our committee member, Jenny, to speak on the criteria to be eligible to apply.
So how do you know if you qualify? Applications are open to any certified nonprofit organization with a 501c3 or equivalent status. International organizations are welcome to apply given that they have the nonprofit status. The organization's mission must align with UNAVSA's values as well as serve within the Asian Pacific Islander community. Please keep in mind that the preliminary selection board will rank applicants based on their proposal, project goals, and their other submitted materials. I will now hand it off to committee member Kevin to talk more about the application.
There are 2 components to the application form and the proposal packet. The application includes general and organization information, such as name, contact, and introduction of your organization, your mission and purpose, and an outline on why you feel your org should be selected as the next CPP beneficiary with concrete goals of what your organization would accomplish with UNAVSA. You can also find a link to our resources on the application form to help you put together your proposal. Please remember to direct all application materials and questions to the CPP Selection Committee at cpp.selection@unavsa.org. I will now pass this off to committee member On to discuss important dates and deadlines of this year's current process.
The top 3 organizations are chosen to present at conference, where your application and proposal packet, as well as any supplementary material, will be reviewed by the preliminary voting board, and then members at conference will vote on next year's beneficiary. After individual and group Q&A portions, the conference attendees then deliberate within their regions to vote who they believe should be the next CPP beneficiary. As you can see on the slide, the application deadline this year is April 11th. The preliminary voting period will take place during all of May, and results will be sent out by June 20th. Our top 3 finalists will then give their presentations at conference this year in Atlanta, Georgia in August. I will now pass it back to Tiffany.
We invite you to learn more about the Collective Philanthropy Project and to connect with UNAVSA as you go through the CPP selection process. Good luck to all of our applicants, and we hope to see you at the UNAVSA Leadership Conference in Atlanta this year as one of our top 3 finalists.
Thank you everyone for getting on and listening. Since we have members of all 3 CPP committees and an e-board member with us tonight, we'd like to open up the floor to any questions. To start off, we'll start by highlighting 2 questions from our FAQ. But if you have any questions that weren't already addressed from our FAQ and our CPP selection packet, please feel free to use the side chat bar and include your name and region or organization.
One of the questions we get asked often is, how does UNAVSA work with its partner regions and organizations to contribute to the annually selected philanthropy project? Simply putting it, UNAVSA is the middleman between the CPP beneficiaries and the regional partnerships. We work closely with the beneficiary through campaign committee to raise awareness of the organization, missions, projects, and etc. Raising funds to support our CPP beneficiaries is mostly driven by grassroots efforts by members of UNAVSA across the United States and Canada. We ask our CPP from a regional or membership school standpoint. The contribution is varied. Regions compete against each other to fundraise money and raise awareness, while membership school may pledge quantitative amounts annually to demonstrate the growth, sustainability, and involvement of their local VSA. I will now pass it on to Kevin for the next question.
Another question that we often get is, how can we continue receiving information regarding the annual application process if not selected at the coming year's beneficiary? Our primary outlets are our UNAVSA's Facebook page and our UNAVSA newsletter. Of course, we wish that we can partner with every organization that applies, so we encourage reapplications and continual partnerships. We are also certainly always open to exploring other ways to learn and partner with each other.
So we have received 1 question in the chat. Kevin from Vietnam Health Clinic asked, can you speak a bit more about the specifics of how you will choose a project? So to answer this question, our selection team will take all of the applications and compile them in a way that we can provide it to our voting members. So not only is our selection team going to be the ones voting, our executive board as well as our Council of Regional Representatives will be looking at all the applications come in. Each group will have a vote, and overall selection facilitates this process. And afterwards, we discuss and we invite the top 3 to conference for the presentation, as well as a Q&A portion live in front of our constituents. And from then, our constituents will vote for our beneficiary for the coming year. Tiffany or Jen or anyone, is there anything you'd like to add to my answer? Anything you want to clarify?
Yeah, so I can add to that. So some of the projects we have seen in the past have dealt with building homes or providing water to very poor communities. So a lot of the things that the preliminary board will look at is the sustainability of the project, how long it will last, and if it is something that can be maintained for a long period of time. Another thing that we look at is the impact that it has within a community, whether it is something that's tangible like food and water or clothes, or if it's something like providing a sport to give children or a community some morale boost within their community. Other than that, we see a wide range of projects across the spectrum. And so we definitely do take a look at each project with considerable care and just make sure to kind of see what kind of impact that it'll create within the community that you're trying to get.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, in regards to projects or initiatives that we look for, that we don't look for, we don't really have a specific criteria. We definitely don't favor, certain causes over others. We really care more about the quality of the application and then the impact of the project within the proposal. And so, a lot of the factors that Kim and Tiffany already mentioned, those all go into the decision-making process. And so as long as your proposal includes something with, like a realistic budget and a feasible impact that we feel like, UNAVSA would want to be a part of, those are the kind of things that are more important to us rather than, what kind of organization you are in terms of what cause you support. So as long as the project is a great one and it has a budget that we feel like our community can support, those are the kind of things that we look for.
So it looks like we have another question. And the question is, what is the max we can request? So we have received this question a few times through email, and we haven't given anyone a straight answer because realistically, we don't have a limit. In the past, we have had organizations put in proposals ranging from $5,000 to $50,000, sometimes more, sometimes less. But ultimately, what we're looking for in our proposal that we receive from you is whether or not it's realistic. So we do ask that you give us your financial information, namely your organization status for 501c3, as well as a budget that really breaks down and itemizes the use of the money that you will be requesting from us.
So we have received another question, and the question is, how active should we expect to be on the ground in the United States if we are the recipient? We are a nonprofit 501c3, but we are based in Vietnam. So a lot of the campaigning and of education and advocating for the organization that we do is basically online. So in terms of any groundwork within the United States, there's probably not a lot that you would have to do. If you were a beneficiary, the only commitment you would have to make is all of our online meeting calls, as well as attending the next year's annual leadership conference for Gala. So in terms of that question, there would be very minimal, if to none, groundwork within the United States.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, we have had, beneficiaries in the past that were certainly not based, within the US or Canada. And so typically, like Tiffany had mentioned, as long as you're able to communicate with us online, we usually do, have online meetings with the beneficiary just to obviously clear up some things. We like to finalize the project proposal with them and make sure that, we're all on the same page, that the budget is exactly correct and all of that kind of information. So as long as you're accessible online, that's definitely not a problem. And then throughout our audit process, especially when we go over any kind of receipts or things like that, we do, work with the beneficiary for any translations, any kind of conversion rates and things like that. So that's definitely not a problem. We welcome any kind of nonprofit organization, as long as, whatever your cause or your project is, lines up with UNAVSA's belief and mission and whatnot. So certainly not a problem.
So another question that we have just received is, are we able to reach out to you and have you review our application and consult changes via the budget or execution of the proposed projects? Yes, of course. Please feel free to email us at cpp.selection@unavsa.org if you're interested in having our committee provide feedback or review your application. Even if you've already submitted it and you're interested in having us look at it again, just let us know and we're happy to discuss as a committee and then provide you things to add on to your application.
Another question we have just received is, when you refer to the API community, do you mean service or connections more to the community in the US or the international API community or those located in Vietnam? So in terms of this question, we usually so our organization is based within the United States and Canada, but we are able to take applications from pretty much anywhere. As long as the project proposal and the organization applying does fall within our requirements of being 501c3 nonprofit and supporting the Vietnamese as well as the Asian American community, we'll be able to look at any project and to judge it accordingly from that. So we are pretty much open to any projects or service that will make a direct impact with Vietnamese in Vietnam or Vietnamese anywhere across the globe, as well as the Asian American community within the United States or as well international.
So we have one last question for our webinar tonight. Question is, how is the application judged? Is there a rubric you can provide later? At this time, we have not finalized our rubric that your application will be judged by yet. We, as a committee, can discuss the possibility of providing a rubric later. But generally speaking, just based off previous years, the application will be looked at holistically. We'll look at the application portion, but will primarily be focused on your proposal packet as it does encompass your letter and your financial information in the project overall, because that is what we're most interested in to decide whether or not your project is sustainable with our funds and whether or not your project actually will support our vision and mission as an organization. So in short, just to recap, we don't have a finalized rubric yet, and we potentially will look into sharing it with you later. If you are interested, please feel free to remind us by sending us an email if you're interested in asking about a rubric, or if you're interested in us, again, looking at your application or anything.
If there are no other questions, then this will wrap up the CPP Selection Informational webinar. If you have any additional questions, though, please feel free to reach out to the CPP Selection Committee at cpp.selection@unavsa.org for any other questions. We thank you so much for everyone who came out tonight, and we hope you have a good night.